It is day 4 of Cathay Week, and I'm back, and I wanted to try as much magic as I could. I really like magic. I really like Pillar of Fire, and this army can do Pillar of Fire like no other since Sisters of the Thorn have been nerfed. So, what I wanted to do was build a list with as much magic in the character slot as possible, and then also go for the Jade Sentinels, which let you pick a single spell, and it's pick from either Battle Magic or Elementalism, level 3. So it's basically better Sisters of the Thorn pre-nerf. There is a downside. These things are way less maneuverable, so it's a lot harder for you to stay out of dispel range. It's a lot harder for you to stay out of harm's range. You can get charged a lot more easily. But I think it's interesting. I want to see how it goes. Now, I'll talk about it more in the actual list build section. There are 2 ways that you can do it. You can either go for 2 Sentinels and have a Shigengan Lord as your general, or you go for, 3 Sentinels and a Shigengan Lord as your general, or 2 Sentinels and then you also pick up Mao Ying, and Mao Ying is the new special character. I wanted to test her on the tabletop, so I went that way. As a quick reminder for all of the rules that overlap, all of the things that you can bring in terms of why this is going to do so much damage, we've got, first of all, Mao Ying. You don't have to bring her, but has the Storm Dragon's Fury. It's a 10 cast on a 10, 18-inch range magic missile, and it's 2d3 strength 5 hits at AP -3, and it makes you give ground. This is a really strong magic missile. This is the sort of thing that toughness 6 units don't really want to have to deal with. You know, this can go into a dragon. I'm wounding on 5s, so, you know, maybe I get a couple of wounds through. It's AP3, so I'm getting you pretty close to having, you know, no or low armor save, depending on what sort of dragon it is. Obviously, there's a ward save there, but this is the sort of spell that can chip off a wound or 2 on a dragon pretty consistently, whereas something like a fireball is going to struggle more. So, really strong. It's obviously great into knights. Any T3 knights will just fall over immediately. T4 knights don't like this either, and they tend to be more expensive. It's also pretty decent into stuff like large monsters that don't have good saves. Looking at you, for example, the giant spawn that I killed. At least one of the giant spawn with this spell. I think it was 2, actually. But yeah. Really good magic missile here. She also brings a couple of other bits and pieces. The most important thing to remember is that she is a level 2 wizard on as a human form, and a level 4 wizard as a human form, level 2 as a dragon. So that is how she's going to be playing around with. Then if we go down to the lore of Yang, there's also Constellation of the Dragon. This is the second magic missile that you can pick up. Mao Ying can have this and her own magic missile, and the Shigengan Lords can pick this just as a signature spell. So it makes battle magic even stronger. Magic missile, it's, you know, the 7, cast on a 7, cast on 11, 18-inch range. It's a worse fireball if you get it off on a 7, but it's a way better, you know, it's like a summoning, but better if you get it off on 11. So assuming you get the higher value, it's 2d6 plus 2 strength 4 hits at AP1. This is what we're going to be fishing for. This is why I'm going to be looking to try and put some power scrolls into my list, which is difficult when you're playing with Mao Ying because she's so expensive, but we're going to be giving that a go. The other reason that I'm taking Mao Ying is because right now in the match play handbook, you can only have a single level 4 wizard if you are playing at 2,000 points. However, that restriction does not apply to named characters. So I can have a level 4 Shigengan Lord, I can have a level 4 Mao Ying, and then I could go for like a level 2 Shigengan General as well when I've got the points to do so, which I think is an interesting way to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if tournament organizers don't run that bit of the rule and they just say you can only have one level 4 in general, but testing it out, going to see if that makes a difference. On top of that, there is a couple of rules in here that are really nice in terms of what we're bringing. Mastery of the Elemental Winds. Once per turn, you can get +1 to your casting roll if you're within range of another wizard. This is done after you see the roll, or you can do it beforehand, but it's got no timing on it, so you can do it after you see what the roll is. This means that you can get that, you know, you roll a 10 with your magic missile. Oh, let me just get the +1. You roll a 9 with Mao Ying. Oh, let me get the +1. You're getting your spells off more consistently. This is really nice. And then there's the Elemental Winds. Now, if you're going magic missiles, it actually doesn't give you all that much because you have to have the Law of Yang special rule. Sorry, the Law of Yin special rule to get the extra range on your magic missiles. But it does give, most importantly in my eyes, +3 to dispel range if you roll the Winds of Yang. So all my wizards, you know, getting a bit of a buff here in terms of that. And then on top of that, the Elemental Winds giving you a buff to either weapon skill or movement, depending on what you need in the situation, which wind is blowing. So those are the special rules. Let's have a look at some lists. For my list, I was playing the Grand Cathay, and I wanted to go as heavy on the magic missiles as possible, so I was playing around with a pair of Jade Sentinels, and I decided there's two ways you could do this. You could either go with a Shigangan Lord as your general, at which point you can take a Cathayan Sentinel in special, or you go Mao Ying, who is pretty heavy on the magic missiles, doing a lot of work there, and then you don't get to take an extra one in special, but you've got another really good caster. I chose to go for Mao Ying. Just a cool special character. I want to try it on the table. But I think I like the Shigangan Lord play more. Something to mess around with. I'll definitely be playing more with this style of army in the future. So, the army is Mao Ying, who's my general. I went for a Shigangan Lord, who I gave the Iron Talons, Heavy Armor, Level 4 upgrade, Law of Yang, because that's where the magic missile lives, riding a Great Spirit Longbow, Battle Magic, and I've gone for the Learned Feng Shi Bow and a Power Scroll. The Learned Feng Shi Bow gives me +1 spell known. Nice and simple there. Just going for a 5-spell battle magic caster that's going to swap into another magic missile. The Shigangan General as well, really nice. Again, going for the Iron Talons and the Heavy Armor. Getting to that 3-up, 5-up save is 3-up armor save, 5-up ward. It's really nice. Again, I was in Law of Yang, so I had a reliable spell. And then I was Battle Magic. I couldn't afford to take a Learned Feng Shi Bow without making some cuts. Maybe dropping the Power Scroll and getting a 3rd spell on this caster would have been better. But I think if I want to tweak it more efficiently, I'd probably just drop Mao Ying and I go for something different. So yeah, a pair of relatively beefy casters here, and then one less beefy caster or more beefy dragon who does less casting. Either or, both are good. Into core, something that I've been playing around with is the Jade Lancer, double Jade Lancer unit. So this one I went with an Alchemist Mask on the unit champion, which is Plague of Rust as a bound spell level 3. I gave them Drilled, I gave them Stubborn, and I gave this unit the ward save as well. Celestian Dragon Guard, giving them extra weapon skill, extra leadership as well, I think, and a 6-up ward save. Just nice to have that as an efficiency boost. Also, the Icon of Heavenly Fury, the standard that turns off fly for your opponent for 1 turn. Ended up not mattering, but it would have been nice to have in the back pocket. And then my opponent had... Sorry, not my opponent. My second unit of Jade Lancers was one here with Ruby Ring of Ruin on the unit champion. Again, Drilled and Stubborn. Just keeping it fairly standard. And that comes to a nice round 500 points. Want to spend as little as possible on core, although maybe that's changing now that we've got the match playbook. But I knew that we were going to be playing the baggage train one, so I thought I can just stick to a relatively simple list and think about what I need to do to change things in the future. Anyway, a couple of Jade Sentinels as well. These are the ones that give you the ability to pick a spell from Battle Magic or Elementalism, and for this I'm going to be picking double Pillar of Fire because I played it with Sisters of the Thorn. I know it's very good. Why not just keep going and make sure that it works the way that it worked for me in other lists. I got my opponent Jack to send me the Warriors of Chaos list he played here as well. Given that I couldn't have mine on the import screen, I figured I'd just show them both this way. And Jack has gone for a slightly updated, but basically still the same list. I think there's probably going to be some changes coming in terms of how Warriors of Chaos build their list, but you know, we're still very early on. We're still sort of wrapping our head around all of the changes. Chaos Lord, fairly standard here. Demonic Mount, Ogre Blade, 3 Favors of the Gods, Brazen Collar, Enchanting Aura. Magic Resist, makes you strike last, has an Ogre Blade, has 3 rolls on the Gaze of the Gods table. This thing's an absolute beatstick. Then there's a pair of Sorcerer Lords, a level 4 Mark of Tzeentch one with Infernal Puppet, Spell Familiar, Ruby Ring of Ruin. So this is your Blaster caster that probably sits with the unit of Marauder Horseman, Tzeentch Horseman. Then a level 3 Undivided Sorcerer Lord with Spell Familiar for a 4th spell, and then also Tome of the Dark Gods, which lets you pick the signature spells from the other laws. In reality, he only actually ended up picking the Nurgle spell, so maybe Mark and Nurgle would have been better here. By the by. Some things to play around with. I guess it is flexibility. In my matchup, didn't need that. Into core, a big Death Star of Chaos Knights with Magic Resist 2 on the Brazen Collar, in case the Chaos Lord doesn't sit in the unit. 2 units of Warhounds with Vanguard, who are so good now, but maybe we start seeing 10s. Something to think about. 8 Marauder Horsemen, Mark of Tzeentch with Cav Spears, Light Armor Shields, you know, the full shebang. A couple of Shartaks, and then 2 Gigantic Spawn of Chaos. I was expecting to play against a very similar list to this, but with a Warpfire Dragon. But no, it was nice to see this Spawn of Chaos back on the table. And I think they're still good. They're like really good wound sponges. So I think in this matchup, it might have actually been harder for me to deal with them. I could have turned off the fly on the Warpfire Dragon for a turn, and even though it has a 5-up save on top of the, a 5-up ward against magic attacks, whereas the Gigantic Spawn don't have that, it's a lot less wounds. I think it would have been easier for me to kill one Warpfire Dragon than 2 Gigantic Spawns of Chaos. So an interesting adaptation here. I didn't tell my opponent what I was going to be bringing. I just said I'm not going to be playing the Lantern build. But yeah, maybe they were expecting me to have 1 or 2 lanterns, and these things are very good into lanterns because you don't have to respect vision arcs for charges or charges with random movers. If you are able to wheel and get into base-to-base contact, jobs are good. You're going to be there. We wanted to keep things relatively simple, so we decided that we were going to play Open Battle, or in this case, Upon the Fields of Glory, which is basically what Open Battle was. 12 inches deployment zone. You are just long ways deployment, there are no special rules, and there are optional secondary objectives. We decided that we were going to play a standard 6-round game, just normal, again, open battle, and if I go to page 28, we decided that we were going to use the baggage train. Secondary objectives, baggage trains. This is an interesting one. Basically, it's a little model that is 60 by 100 mil. It is dangerous terrain for movement, so you can move through it, but it's dangerous terrain. It doesn't block line of sight, so you can't hide behind it, which is normally the way that you'd want to be holding some sort of objective like this if you can be. They're placed after the battlefield is set up, but before deployment begins, so you're always going to know where you're going to put it in terms of deploying your armies. It has to be wholly within deployment zone and at least 3 inches away from any battlefield edge. They may not be placed within terrain or straddling a lone linear obstacle, and it can't be moved after that point. In terms of controlling it, you've got to hold it with a unit strength 10 or more model that's not fleeing, hasn't got stupidity, and is within 6 inches of it. If 2 or more eligible units are close enough, it's the closest one. However, if they're both equally close, basically if they're both touching it, it becomes contested and neither unit controls it. Destroying it. Unit strength 5 or more can attempt to destroy. The way that this works is you move into base contact with it in the remaining move subphase. And then once you're in base contact, it begins to destroy. You can't do anything other than fight back in combat and cast spells with range combat or self, which honestly, that seems a little bit too generous, I would say. But, it's fine. Then at the beginning of your next start of turn subphase, if you are in base contact with it and you still have a unit strength of 5 or more, and you're not engaged in combat, and you're not fleeing, it destroys the baggage, and you remove it from the battlefield, and then if you've destroyed your opponent's baggage train, you get 250 victory points, and if you control one at the end of the game, you get 100 victory points. Now, the first time I saw this, I thought I was going to be real clever, and I was like, oh, I'm going to destroy my own baggage train on turn 1, but you can only be in base contact with the enemy's baggage train to destroy it, so that was something that I misread on my first pass through, which is a shame, because I think, well, not a shame, I think it would just make it a non-factor, because you destroy it on turn 1, so your opponent never gets the 250 points for destroying yours and give up the 100 points, that you would be getting anyway. So anyway, yeah, playing a fairly standard battle, keeping it simple while we're getting used to the match playbook, and we're looking to destroy the baggage train or control it, depending on how the game goes. Apologies for the names on the screen. Obviously, we haven't quite got all of the Cathay stuff added into Warhol yet, so I'm sure that'll come sooner rather than later. But for now, I just had to use the right base sizes and something that represented the models in the game. So, in terms of my deployment, down in the bottom left, I had one of the... I'm looking at the word Colossus and it's blown my, completely thrown me off. But I had one of the Cathayan Sentinels, the Jade Sentinels, on the left flank, and I had one on the right flank. The reason for that is I'm leaning into the magic in this game. I want to try and avoid the dispel threat. So if my opponent is in range to dispel one of them, they're not in range to dispel the other one, because they've only got a single wizard that I'm super worried about. Obviously, there's one of the Chaos Knights as well, but not too bothered there. Then I've got the Demon Smith Sorcerers, the level 2 wizard, I should say, the level 2 Shigengan General here, near the forest, and I've got the level 4 Shigengan General, which is over next to Mao Ying, over to the right. What we've got, because we decided we were playing the baggage train, which is one baggage train up in the top right here and one in the bottom right down here, we both wanted to pretty much overload the flank, but my opponent decided to overload the right flank with stuff that, wants to get into combat as soon as possible, and then put their Chaos Knights more central left, which gives them an opportunity to sort of sweep in and try and flank me if I push too aggressively to try and get the objective. This early on, it's hard to decide whether or not it's worth going for the full commitment into objectives. I think maybe I didn't play around the objectives too well, but that's fine. You know, these are the reasons that we play these test games. So, I've got the 2 units of Jade Lancers here. The unit that's got the Ruby Ring of Ruin is in a marching column 2 wide, and then the unit that has got the Alchemist Mask, the Plague of Rust bound spell, is just deployed behind the wall. I was thinking about using them and just sort of having them hold the objective towards the end of the game. In retrospect, I think that was too much commitment. I should have just dealt with my opponent and then later on in the game go, you know what, we're going to try and work backwards from here. So, my opponent, a couple of units of giant spawn in front of his baggage train, 2 Chaos Warhounds here, and then Dragon Ogre on each flank as well. And of course, the ever-typical Marauder Horseman bunker up in the top left, behind a hill, with the Markazine caster in, the Blaster caster, as we'll call it. So, roll-off happened. I had slightly fewer drops and got in there first, so I got the +1, rolled a higher number, and got in with my first turn. And you can see I committed forwards, and I wanted to try and get as much pain as possible. In terms of spells, I probably should talk about those. So I picked Pillar of Fire on both of the Jade Colossus. Having played a lot of Sisters of the Thorn, I know that this is a very effective way to play. It's going to be a lot harder to play around with the Jade Colossus doing that, even though, well, apart from the fact that they're 250 points instead of 150, they are also much slower. What I typically do with the Sisters of the Thorn, cast Pillar of Fire turn 1, turn 2, while I'm in marching column, just run away from the dispel threats, and that was sort of the game plan. Much harder to do with the Jade Sentinels here, so we're just keeping them on the flank and we're not moving them too aggressively forwards. But I get Pillar of Fire off here on the left from one of the Sentinels. I get Pillar of Fire over here in the right from the same, and then for the one caster who did roll Pillar of Fire, which is the Shigengan General, Shigangan Lord, sorry, I did put a Pillar of Fire towards the central blast here. In terms of damage went really well. I was feeling really confident on turn 1. I pushed the unit with Ruby Ring up, and I transformed Mao Ying forwards and then walked forwards a little bit. Knowing that all of the damage was in the top left corner, I wasn't super worried. There was a risk that the giant spawn got into Mao Ying, but I was about, I think, 15 or 16 inches away from the closest one to her. Maybe it was even 16 or 17. So it was very unlikely that Mao Ying was going to get caught. Wasn't too worried about that. The unit with the Alchemist Mask pushed up as well, just in terms of trying to get into Plague of Rust range when my opponent moves forwards to turn 2. Again, in reality, I either should have committed to holding the baggage train and being behind the hill, or just, actually being useful. Probably should have done the second one. But I unleashed an entire volley of magic missiles, and as you can see over here, I'm not sure why there's a wound marker up in the top left. There were no wounds done to this unit behind the hill, but I did manage to take down 1 of the giant spawn and 4 of the Chaos Warhounds, which was pretty incredible for its first turn salvo. Lots of magic missiles. Mao Ying's, obviously, her Storm Dragon magic missile does absolute work, and it chewed through those Nurgle great giant spawn with relative ease. I felt really comfortable about it. In retrospect, I think I rolled a little bit high as well, and that did come back to bite me later in the game, because then I was just like, of course I'm going to be able to do damage, but we'll get to that down the line. So, magic missiles, both the Shigengan Lord and Mao Ying lit up the giant spawn here. Between the two of them, all of the magic missiles just finished it off. I still had a Ruby Ring here. Ruby Ring went into the dogs, killed 4 of them, and of course, Leadership 6 dogs, just passed. They didn't have any concerns. Always seems to be the way with these with the Warhounds. They pass more leadership tests than they should do, but it's okay. Although one dog is more annoying, or not more annoying. One dog is annoying enough that you want to have to deal with them in some way. And deal with it I did, because that was the end of my turn. Going into my opponent's turn 1, I put the Pillar of Fire through that dog, and I killed it, burning them alive. Other than that, my Pillars of Fire didn't do much. One moved up. I was trying to block in the giant spawn, basically, or try to do more damage to it, because Pillar of Fire is not a bad spell to do damage to the gigantic spawn. Cuts through the armor save. They only get the regen. You need 6s to wound, but you're averaging 5 hits, so it's not unlikely that you get 1 wound through. Anyway, neither of them hit the giant spawn, which was fine. Honestly, I probably could have positioned the one in the top middle right a little bit better, but that's okay. And the one cast by the Jade Sentinel did move forwards towards the hill. That was never going to catch anyone. For my opponent, this was not. This also contributed to my full sense of security, and I should know better because I've played against Warriors of Chaos a lot. So they full sent forwards with the Warriors of Chaos unit, and then they Arcane Urgency, so they went from all the way up in the top left to being in a very aggressive position over here. This is what I was expecting, but they did get a little bit further than I was expecting them to get forwards. The Giant Spawn rolled 13 or 14 inches, something like that, and got relatively far forwards. And again, I wasn't super bothered. I was like, whatever. I killed the last one. I'll kill this one. It's okay. And the Dragon Ogre as well came in from the flank, and then a nice sneaky move. And this is something I'm going to have to remember, and something that I'll probably make a video about how to deal with a baggage train best, is this unit of Warhounds just marched full 21 inches forwards. My opponent didn't Vanguard forwards, and when I said, oh, you forgot to Vanguard, would you like the opportunity to just do it, even though we've rolled, do you want to do it? They said, no, I deliberately didn't Vanguard forwards. You've got so many magic missiles that I don't really want to give you an easier time to hit me with them, which was interesting. But anyway, so they marched forwards 21 inches here, which I was like, okay, sure, move blocking shenanigans. I wasn't expecting the way they used it, which was to go for the baggage train. And yeah, otherwise, basically just full send forwards, doing some damage as well. Now, my army does blasting pretty well, but so does a Tzeentch caster. Now, the level 4 wizard is the one that's in this unit here, and level 4 casting Blue Fire, Fireball, Pillar of Fire, we decided to use a different pillar for my opponent's, Pillar of Fire, because given that I have 3, it was already pretty difficult to keep track of whose was who, so we just used the Tempest for his. Anyway, so Pillar of Fire was cast. Fireball actually failed to go off, but Blue Fire did do 2 wounds to the Shigengan General, which is more than I'm comfortable with. I know they start with 6 wounds, but if one spell's doing 2 wounds to me, I'm not super in love with that. So a little bit of an opening salvo, not too much done there. I wasn't too worried about it, but we were put in this position where, I'm now in a little bit of a pressure spot, and I've got to do plenty of damage back to make sure that I don't just get folded on my next turn. Do I get folded? Well, I do some damage. I, in my infinite wisdom, decided that even though I was going to transform Mao Ying into a dragon, because I need something to put pressure on this big unit of Chaos Knights, I also just felt like I could kill the gigantic spawn with all my magic missiles, not thinking about the fact that there was a wizard in the bunker here that was come forwards. I'm now a level 2 wizard on Mao Ying. Yeah, not my finest move. So I ended up actually, I think I marched this Shigengan Lord as well, and it turns out I had very little to put into the giant spawn. I'm going to blame it on the fact that I was thinking about new roles, new missions, because this was a real sort of a real blunder in terms of planning my turn out and damage allocation. But I put some, I shuffle backwards with both units of Lancers to make sure I'm out of the range of the Chaos Lord. I transform Mao Ying. I shuffle her around, so I can be charged by the Night Brick, but it's a little bit more difficult, and I'm setting up so that if they come forward to try and get something else, I can get a flank charge. The Shigengan General takes a wound from the Pillar of Fire at the start of the turn and then runs the hell away. And other than that, it was just sort of posturing for the next turn, trying to do a little bit of damage. I did a couple of chip wounds to the Giant Spawn. I think there was maybe a Storm Dragon's Wrath or Fury, whatever the spell's called, and a Fireball from the Ruby Ring. It was literally 1 or 2 magic missiles made it into the Giant Spawn, and it was as I got to the sort of, I'd rolled my first spell to do damage, I was like, wait, hold on, there's no way I'm going to kill this Giant Spawn. So, definite misallocation of resources there, and all I really managed to do on this turn is chip away. So, does my opponent manage to pressure me? He absolutely does. We get, goes immediately for the charge into Mao Ying. Mao Ying's a dragon, but the Chaos Lord is a Chaos Lord with Enchanting Aura, Ogre Blade, enough stuff in there that to make you go, ooh, I'm not super comfortable about that. The Pillars of Fire do some work, but then all 3 of them get dispelled. 1 pillar here on the top left goes through the unit of Marauders, kills, I think it was 2, then gets dispelled because the Jade Sentinel is in range of this wizard over here. Over in the center, both the Cathay Sentinel and the Shigengan Lord are in range, so again, I think I managed to do a couple of wounds maybe to the Giant Spawn with the Pillar of Fires, but it ends up being dispelled ends up going away. And that's really the end of the Pillar of Fire experiment for me, because my opponent charges on both flanks a Dragon Ogre into each of the Cathayan Sentinels, which I was like, I don't think that's a fight you win. And over time they didn't, but what it did do was it did tie them up in combat, so there was no more Pillar of Fire. And the Shartaks are relatively tanky, 4 wounds, they've got good attacks so they can do some punch back, and it ended up being more of a close fight than I was expecting it to be. Whether or not, that ends up being the case long term, maybe I'll do some maths, I'll sit down and work out whether I think it's going to be close enough to be worthwhile. But anyway, 2 charges here, one into the Sentinel on the right, one into the Sentinel on the left. Both fights went pretty even. In fact, both fights ended up a tie. So down at the bottom left here, both of us did 2 wounds to each other. So the Dragon Ogre was left on 2, I was left on 4. On the right flank, I did 1 wound, but fortunately had a flank charge. Oh no, sorry, I did +1 wound because the Cathayan Sentinel has close order. So ended up just being tied combats on both sides due to the number of wounds, the close order bonus, and then the flank charge, which was, we did the first one, I was like, that wasn't the result I expected, and we did the second fight, I was like, oh, okay, so I'm just going to be tied up here forever, which didn't feel great. The Sentinels are fun. I do like the Sentinels. If you're deciding to go for the direct attacks, only having 3 does feel pretty rough. Both times I only got a single wound through, which was not great, as in a single wound before the multiple damage step. So it was okay, but it was a little concerning. The Giant Spawn did make its way into the Lancers, and oh yes, that was right. We did actually click end turn here before we rolled all of the damage out. So you'll see where everyone moves to in a second. But yeah, Giant Spawn came in, ate a couple of Lancers. They ran right through this unit of Warhounds, which is also marching columned up to touch the baggage, the cabbage cart here, which was, yeah, something that can move so fast. Is unit strength 5, can just get in and touch it. I had so many other problems because of how poorly I'd played the turn before. It ended up being a case of, because of where the hill was and where my units were, it was very difficult for me to get in and actually interact with this unit here at all. And my opponent ended up just surviving through the next turn, destroying the baggage cart and getting 250 victory points for it, which is a little concerning on turn 2. It's a lot of value. Obviously, they didn't get the points until turn 3, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to interact with them this turn. Combat between Mao Ying and the dragon went pretty okay. We both did a couple of wounds to each other. I think my opponent did 3 to me, or maybe 4 to me, and I did 2 back. But then, coming into my next turn, I transform back into Mao Ying, heal 2 wounds, and it just feels pretty good to be in a position where you can sit there and go, oh, I can take the risk in the dragon form. I can then teleport back, get out of combat, because I did lose by a small amount, give ground, and then just go, I'm just going to teleport out of here to stay safe. But yeah, this has turned into a very, very messy game. So you can see here, this unit of Lancers, the one that's run off the board. I do manage to finish off the unit here, the Giant Spawn, just a couple of magic missiles, and otherwise just sort of move around posture. In my turn, the Sentinel over here kills the Dragon Ogre that it's tied up with, and the same on the left flank. But in both cases, I've taken some wounds, and I've lost an opportunity to do a Pillar of Fire. Looking at how little my opponent has on the board at this point, a couple of Pillar of Fires would be absolutely brutal if I got them off. Now, both of them would be in dispel range of my opponent, but there's only a level 3 wizard in the unit of Warriors of Chaos, so yeah, definitely some choices there that I could have made differently. Despite the magic resist 2 on the unit of Chaos Knights and the level 3 sorcerer in there, I do manage to get the Plague of Rust off with Alchemist Mask, which is really nice. So then with some magic missile fun, I do manage to chip away at the unit of Chaos Knights, leaving 4 models in there and the Chaos Lord. But otherwise just starting to chip away at what's left and do my best to remove the models as I can. However, I did make the choice to stay in front of the Chaos Lord, in terms of with Mao Ying. I wanted to make sure that I could... it looks like I'm on the hill here. I wasn't actually on the hill with my opponent wasn't on the hill with Chaos Spawn. So I needed to be touching the hill with Mao Ying, at which point I figured I may as well just stand in front, do as much damage as possible, and position in a way so that, yeah, sure, I'm going to get charged, but Mao Ying's pretty decent in combat. Maybe I lose a couple more wounds. Next turn I'm going to transform back into a dragon. It's not the end of the world. although it is the end of the world, because my opponent not only destroys the baggage cart here with their dogs, they do something else which is really nice with them, which is position in a way so that when Mao Ying loses combat, she runs right off the board. This was one of those where you're like, I'm not even mad. Fair play. You've got so much value in that 35-point unit. This was sort of the big swing. The game was, I think, a little bit out of my favour, but I had more stuff than my opponent. Like, I was in a little bit of a rough spot, but I definitely had some plays. Mao Ying was going to transform next turn. I was going to position to threaten the unit behind. Obviously, I can't charge this turn, but I could transform, move over here somewhere, just stand in front with the dragon and say, what are you going to do about it? You need to get Arcane Urgency off, or this unit is dead. So, had some stuff there, but I didn't see the marching column of dogs to make Mao Ying run off the board, which was a good play, a very good play. I respect it. And Mao Ying, did 1 wound to the Chaos Lord, took some wounds back, lost on combat res, fell back in good order, ended up going through the dogs, went off the board, and that was that. It was a pretty rough swing for me, but it's not the end of the world. There is still some hope for me. I've got a unit of lancers that is tied up in combat with the Chaos Lord. They, it was an overrun into them, so they haven't taken any damage yet, but they are really looking like they're going to take some punishment. However, into my turn, the Sentinel here is potentially going to charge into the back of the Caster Bunker. The Shigengan Lord and the Cathayan Sentinel on the right are going to charge into the big unit of Chaos Knights. Yeah, there's definite play for me. So that's what I do, coming into my turn. And I challenge out the general, because I know that if the enemy general this is, I know that if my opponent is able to free hit with his Chaos Lord into the Jade Sentinel, it's going to fall over very, very easily. I wanted to put it into the Shigengan General because at least that has a double save. It has more chance. And he only had a couple of wounds left. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2. I think he had 2 wounds left. I have a decent chance. I've got a Strike's First weapon, which means that even with Enchanting Aura, I'm still hitting him at a reasonable pace. I was like, yeah, this is fine. It all just goes horrendously. My Shigengan General just gets 1 banged, 7 wounds right out the window. Chaos Lords that roll extra attacks are an absolute nightmare to deal with. Strength 7, Toughness 5, or I think he might have been Strength 8 actually by this point. Wounding me on 2s, getting through most of my armor save. Having a 5-up ward is not enough to save me. And really from here, it's just sort of the last dregs of scoring out the points. So what looked like it could have been quite a close game, a misposition on turn 2 really cost me. And you can see here, the charge from the Jade Sentinels. He didn't even attempt to flee here, even with the probable rally, because he'd put his Pillar of Fire through me. I was then charging through dangerous terrain. I lost a wound to the dangerous terrain. I didn't lose a wound to the Pillar of Fire. I lost a wound to the dangerous terrain and ended up in a situation I was like, okay, cool. There's very little for me to salvage here. Let's see if I can save some points. My opponent just turned around, did the last 2 wounds to the Jade Sentinel. Wasn't worried about that at all. Between the Pillar of Fire bouncing through endlessly and then the 3 direct damage spells, or I guess the 2 direct damage spells that it's got, and the Ruby Ring Rune. So yeah, 3 direct damage spells. Was very comfortable just killing me. Given that I had no wizards left, it was good, yeah. The combat here, the Jade Sentinel absolutely folds the Warrior of Chaos, the Chaos Lord, as expected, and the marching column of dogs just gets out of the charge arc of the Lancers, because I absolutely would have gone for them, just try and get 35 points. Get some consolation prize here. I come into my turn, I hide behind the hill so he hopefully can't catch me. Go into his turn, he marching columns the dogs towards the baggage up in the top right. He's going to try and get those extra 100 points. He's already probably 20 owed me, but why not, get more points? In fact, I guess with the amount I've killed, it's probably not a 20-0, but always good to get as many points as possible. The unit of the caster unit here moves down, gets in range, out of range of blue fire, in range with the double magic missile, the fireballs, does a wound, or does like 5 wounds, but I get quite lucky on saving them. Chaos Lord moves over so it can see, and then onto my turn, I try and run away. Onto my opponent's turn, marching columns the dogs. Chaos Lord charges, I flee, go a good distance, don't get caught. The dogs touch the objective here, and the wizard isn't able to finish off the last 2 models. But it is a crushing victory for my opponent. The Cathayans, I guess, is that right? The armies of Grand Cathay, we'll say, not doing so hot in their first run out. I really like the magic missile build. It's something that I'm going to play around with more. Obviously, the lantern build's really good. I'll be playing around with that as well. Probably bring you some sort of battle report on that. Maybe day 6, day 7, something like that. Because I think the Sky Lantern build, while I hope it's not as good as it seems to be, I think will be quite fun to play. So I'm going to give that a run out, a couple of runs out, see how that goes. But yeah, crushing victory for Chaos. Huge point swing in terms of the objectives as well. 350 points at the end there is enough for quite a big points differential swing as well. So if you're still playing 20-0, which I expect a lot of tournaments will be doing, that's probably part of the match playbook that's going to be ignored. Yeah. It was good. It was a really fun game. It was good to actually see how the units interact. I think while I like Mao Ying, if I want to go for a wizard list, I might not bother with Mao Ying. She was great, but she's almost 500 points, and getting around the level 4 restriction is nice, but I don't know if it's worth the full commitment into a special character. And I think if we're being realistic, quite a lot of tournament organisers might say, you know, you're still only allowed one level 4, even if one of them is a named character. That might be something that gets gapped. There's not many armies that can abuse it, but obviously Cathay are one of them. Thank you for watching. Thank you for getting to the end of the video. If you've reached this point and you haven't already, I would really appreciate a like, a comment, a subscription if you haven't done those things. It just helps me get seen by more people, boost me up in the algorithm, all of the stuff that the YouTubers do like to say. If you would like to support me in my goal to become a full-time YouTuber, I would absolutely appreciate that. You can become a member below. There are various perks to those, name at the end of the videos, all that good stuff, but it also unlocks some VIP areas in Discord if you become a Longbeard or Ground Knight tier supporter. Those VIP sections are the only parts that are locked away in Discord. You don't have to be a member to join the Discord. I'd recommend that you should. We've got about 450, 500 people on there. It's a great place for discussion, a lot of fun. I do try and chime in as much as possible. And it's also where the Fix My List show lists are put, and also if you are one of the Ground Knight or Longbeard tier supporters, where you participate in choosing which list I play in the monthly Pick My List series.